I hope you're having a wonderful time. Well, I was going through some of my things here and I came across this. And I was taking a look. I saw that it was interesting that maybe I talk a little bit about it because most of you guys are coming to study here. Some under the GCUB, GCAP, the postgraduate level. So it's going to be important to you who is coming, to engage in research. Well, this is my dissertation. In Brazil, you say dissertation. That's at the master's level. At the doctorate level, you say tese, right? That changes in some countries. But here in Brazil, that is the standard. So I did my master's at the Universidade Federal do Rio Grande, Escola de Química e Alimentos. That's the school. And the program was, of course, Programa de Pós-Graduação em Engenharia Química, right? So that's my formation. And the topic of my research was simulação de perfis de escoamento multifásico, óleo e água, em duto circular horizontal. Basically, I conducted a research. It's a research that has to do with oil and water, in a circular tube. That is something that has to do with transportation of heavy crude. You have heavy crude in many countries like Venezuela, like Canada. We have even some in Nigeria, right? So the idea was to study that. It was in 2019. And you can see the packaging. I really like it, very simple. It looks like a recycled paper. It's pretty. Isn't this the cover page? As you can see. You have the name of the university. This is a kind of a standard because when I was doing my undergraduate, I remember when we will do our, our report, lab report, we cover with similar, similar. So somehow the standards are similar. You have the packaging. Here is what you call folha de aprovação. It's signed usually by or evaluating committee. You have here is my supervisor, this is my co-supervisor, and then you have two external evaluators. Okay, so this is necessary. As you can see, the color of the page is even different. Well, I'm gonna start by saying there are some things I didn't like about this. That was why I brought it here. I think it's worth sharing our mistakes so that people can avoid them. Yes. So if I had the chance of writing this again, there are some things that I wouldn't do. So I'm going to let you know in this video. And one of them is not writing in Portuguese. If you can see, everything was written in Portuguese. Portuguese is a language that we can say the spoken aspect of it is easy. But when you are talking about the written Portuguese, that's the formal, the one you document your stuff, it's really difficult, okay? So if you are coming from an English-speaking country, I think it's advantageous to write in English. You can talk to your supervisor. Some of the big universities have an option where you develop your document in English. It's even better, okay, because somehow when you finish writing it, you just channel it to maybe a journal so that you can publish it, because the objective of developing these documents is basically to publish, and usually you publish them in journals that accept documents in English, right? But you have to learn how to speak Portuguese. You have to insist in learning how to speak Portuguese. Para você conviver aqui no Brasil com as pessoas, é importante que você aprenda o idioma. O idioma te dá acesso a muitas coisas. Não apenas a cultura em si, mas você consegue conectar com as pessoas. Alguém que ouve você comunicando na sua própria língua sente mais confortável, né, para compartilhar com você, conversar com você e também te dá assistência onde é necessário. So it's really important that you learn how to speak Portuguese. so that you can have access to everything, relate with people, and also have access to their documents. They have signs. Brazilian signs is rich. So you have the English, you have the Portuguese. Good. But try to talk to your supervisor to develop the document in English, because that's what you dominate. Okay. So as you can see, we have the, what do you call the summary here? Is the list, how I organize the document. I have list of figures, or let's say images. You have tables, and you have list of symbols. If I was to do this again, I will put Romans, Greek, Arabic symbols. I would categorize them, but I put them all together. Okay, you have the summary. Summary usually is written first, is written in the language of the document. So since it was written in Portuguese, here will be in Portuguese, and the second will be in a selected language. And in this case, I wrote it in English. You can write it in Spanish, you can write it in French. So this is the introduction, and you have the objective. What I didn't enjoy about this document was the figures. I didn't like the figures. If I had the chance to rewrite the document, so I will touch all the figures, the size, the colors, the font, maybe figure like this one. Figure like this one is more presentable, and it's not very lousy, that kind of figure that you would see and say, oh, what an image. But this one is so lousy. Have the blue, then you have this black bars, and you also have the font different. Made some figures too large, like this one. I could have made it smaller. All the same, the content was really good. Have mathematical model here. I worked with two-phase, so you can see that the equations, they have one for oil and one for water, and we use a level set method. You can see here, the objective of this video is not to describe it, so I'm just going through it. You can see, right, the figures, you can see that the figures could have been better. This is the lab setup. If you can see the figure, they are somehow not aligned, So as I said, this was the main challenge of the research, okay? Yeah, we have the mesh, and you have the boundary condition. This is the validation of the model. I did some validation, simulated. I compared with literature work. Yes, all these are validations, and here I start presenting the results. These are the results, and this was what I projected in that setup, that lab setup. But these are some of the profiles. Okay, so in general, if you can see, the figures are not standard. This was basically what I could have changed. I could have done this better. But I'm going to talk about the size of the research. If you can see, I love the size of the research. 95 pages. Yeah. Some people would be like, oh, I want to make like 200 pages. What for? If your research is extensive, try to make it 200. But to correct 200 pages is not easy, most especially if you are in the engineering or scientific field. Try to make it concise. Try to make it very qualitative, and don't beat around the bush too much, because some of us, we want the quantity, which is something that is not really good. Okay, so try to be concise. Now let's talk a little bit about how you start your research. See, when you are doing the masters, one thing you must know is that 2 years goes in a twinkle of an eye. Sometimes if you've not had the experience, you think, oh, 2 years, that's a long period of time, but it goes just like that. So when you start your research, you should try to read, from the inception. You should dedicate your time to read walk with that topic. If you've been given a topic by a lecturer, try to work specifically on that. Usually they provide some of the articles, that's the classical articles. They tell you, okay, they give you like 5, 6, and you should stick to that. Maximum you go to 10. When you read these 10 articles, recent articles, 2, 3 years, you can go to 5, but try to read, recent articles. Don't go to 1995, 1980, unless if they are the basis. Okay, there are some articles that are classic. Everyone cites those articles, so you can get them and bring them. Okay, but try to focus on recent publications. Now, when you start reading, don't read too much articles. This was something I did, and somehow you get confused at the end because too much of information, and you want to write, you don't know where to start because you have too much information. Okay, so try to read just few articles. Write, always write. Okay, you read, you write, you read, you write. And sometimes if you are reading and you have to introduce another article, let's say that article cites another article and you think it's necessary to include it in your bibliographical references, always take note of that, because sometimes you forget about how you came across that article, where you found it, where you stored it. But by registering it, you write the name of the author, the years, you put DOI number, you try to register something there, and then you can locate it. Now you have the AIs, it's easy to put some new information, and then you kind of get the reference. Okay, but always if you get the information, you try to put the reference there, most especially if it's very important. Okay, so try to walk, always write 1 page, 2 pages, 1 page, pages. Don't leave it at the end and you start running. You start writing in your first year. That is my advice. Sometimes the supervisor might not stress you. They usually let you relax, but you should be the one to stress yourself, so that at the end of the day you will finish your masters flying colors. And also try to produce, try to participate in events, try to participate in publications. When you're writing, you write with focus on publication, and try to study the journals. Sometimes we make these mistakes of not studying the journals. We study them later. No, when you have a free time, you sit down, you go into Web of Science, you go to some of these major platforms, and then you try to search for journals in your field. Make sure they have the CAPS qualification, right? They have the rankings. You have the A1, you have the B, all those classifications. You check them. Okay, the focus is publishing in a B, because it isn't a very strong research. Then you say, okay, this is not a very strong research. It might belong to the B. But if you think, wow, I love this research, man, I just feel it's my greatest research, then why not publish it in an A journal? Go there, Qualis CAPS, you do the research. Yes, this is A. You put it in focus, you write the article with the standards of that journal. Now, how do you get the standards? By downloading samples. Sometimes you go there, we read how you write, how you develop the article. There is a shortcut. What you do, you download 1, 2, 3 articles, You look at how they write and you're on. Right? So that is how you kind of gain time, because it's very fast. It's a mistake that some of us made. I'm telling you some of the mistakes that I made, okay? But later I realized that it could have been done in a better way, and I'm giving you that. Some of you might be lucky to come to universities that have structure how to develop these documents. You will have it as a subject. Well, when you are developing your images, try to work in vector images so that at the end of the day you can have very qualitative images. Maybe the final image could be in raster, that's the JPEG and the PNG format, and some of these formats that we post on our Instagram, Facebook pages. But if you're working here, try not to work in those formats, because at the end of the day you would have blurred images, right? So that when you expand it and then you reduce it, you'll see the same quality. When you are using vector images, for instance, what do? I have a program called Visio. What do? I copy the raster image, I take it there, I paste it, and then I copy it and bring it back. So from here, I can manipulate it without losing its quality. That I realized in my doctorate, but in my master's, it was disastrous. As you can see it here, right? The images weren't good. But when you are here, you try to look for all the tools. Talk to people. Don't isolate yourself. That is very important. Through conversation, normal conversation, someone can just look at it and say, oh, why didn't you do it this way? Oh, how do I do it? You should be humble enough to ask questions. If you don't know how to do it, you see someone doing it, call that person, oh, please, how did you do it? Sometimes it's surprising. They might be surprised. Oh, but this guy doesn't know this. So don't be ashamed. You are there to learn. So humble yourself and learn from them. They know it. They could be surprised for you not to know it at your level. Information always. Try to get the information always. Right? So that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. It's an experience worth sharing. That is why I made this video for today. We'll see you in the next video.